that would allow, if it works for everybody, why wouldn't you? If you're Gloria Ochoa and Reed Johnson and you have to cover borders, why wouldn't you want to avail yourself of this perpetually? They get 40 journalists working on something, right? So, there's a lot of potential here, and part of that also is the invitation for you to return. So T is returning, and in fact, like there were 2 other people who came by this week, very nicely to say that things are paying off with having work like this. It's really different. It's a really different way of working in journalism, and yet it has all the values.
So is T going to be part of our class?
Just for today.
Oh, for today.
Well, I mean, she's welcome to whatever. She has a project she wants to talk about with you, too.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, so time being of the essence, I had a conversation with Melanie Silk. By the way, I'm not weighing in a lot on the base camp and saying, yeah, but I'm seeing it, and so are the media partners. And Melanie Silk is very excited about the work that's been going on. But she has sort of questions like, who are we as media partners? And I had this sudden vision of a ship. And I said, these media partners are at the rudder. And when you're at the rudder, you can't really see what's going on ahead. But you're nudging. You're saying a little this way, a little that way, ahead, and that Doug McLennan is 5 leagues ahead in uncharted territory because we don't really know where we're going. We do know we're headed for Engine 30 and that on the shores of Engine 30 are 15 Getty Fellows. Okay? And Doug's trying to get us there. And when we're there, we're going to create Pulitzer Prize winning level storytelling. It's a high, high aim and ambition. But it means this is no time for funny, silly business, right? Like, it's really, really a serious time. And that if we hold ourselves to the highest standards, we will actually wake ourselves up the most. So I said, well, okay, here I am. I'm at the helm. I'm at the wheel. And I'm communicating back and forth with Doug, who's just telling me where the rocks are and the sandbars. And every once in a while, a squall is going to come up. The boat is going to list. People down in the galley who are not paying attention might bump their heads. But you can't complain about that. You just have to take care of yourself, because what are you going to do? Jump overboard? If you're up on deck and we list, maybe none of you have ever done this, but it's really, you can like really list. And you might fall overboard again. But if you have a task, if you're paying attention and you're awake, you're not going to. So here is my able-bodied first officer, who is all about stories. And I can occasionally give him the wheel, and I will give him the wheel. But I am not going to run around if one of you falls overboard, and you need to tell your colleagues this who are not in this room. If one of you falls overboard, I'll throw the life jacket out to say, I know where you are, and maybe we'll turn the boat around to go get you, but we have a short amount of time. We have to hit those shores on November 8th. And maybe I'm wrong. And if there's too much complaining or whining or blaming or excuse making or all that sort of stuff, I don't have to worry, because you guys will throw your own colleagues overboard. You've got to do your work. It's serious. And in this room, everybody is. I also, it's just, the No Child Left Behind is kind of, I can't do that anymore because it's too serious. So I'm here, right? Okay? There are these guys in the back with the rudder. They're steering. So it's a kind of intricate relationship. What's going to happen in this class now is we're going to go through the reframings with the media partners. You're going to start playing a game. Start listening as we go through them, piece by piece by piece. Your homework assignment for Friday is to pick 3 stories, 3 treatments, 3 things you really want to do, and convince us in 500 words on 1 page. Just take 1 page. You have to look at the practical things. How practical is this for me to do? Do I need other team members? Like, lay it out like a plan. Like, get real. If one of your stories gets picked, you get 10 points. If 2, you get 20 points. If 3, you get 30 points. That's out of a possible 100 points for this assignment. This assignment is 15% of your final grade.
Is it 500 words, the whole thing, or?
I kind of, 250 words is sort of what fits like about here, about fills out one. It's approximately 500. Just don't go over
Yeah,
one page.
all 3. 500.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
All 3?
Each one is 500 words.
Each one is.
You're going to need it because you've got to explain,
Yeah, yeah.
I want to do it for this particular, you can do it for varieties of projects. You also have to be doing something that Ricky told me he's doing, and this is really interesting. As you've been doing your research and your gathering, he has been collecting visualization data because he's realized that the education story of 30 years ago is kind of like a tough, gnarly, not very interesting story to tell. But in visualization data, it will be lovely. So he's collecting this stuff to hand to Miles Lightwood and to Sean Kelly and to Logan Young and to Marissa Gluck and to Chris Spurgeon and say, okay, I get the feeling that this is going to be important. So start looking ahead. One thing also before the media partners, I'll stick on the homework for a second. So this homework that you've got in that's for next week is 15% of your final grade. Homework in general, if you look at the syllabus, which as I said to you last week, the week by week for the syllabus is pretty much, we're now in uncharted territory. So don't hold me to those week by weeks. I had to kind of fill them in to please the powers that be and to think about it. I mean, I needed to think in an organized way. But homework is 25% of your grade. That's all the ungraded stuff you've been doing, the creative THARP stuff, the coverage of the underground. I haven't been grading it, but if you're not doing it, you're going to get dinged. Okay? So it's just, if you keep the pace with doing it, just because it's not graded doesn't mean it's not graded. It is graded. And participation also counts. It's 10%. So all these things begin to factor in. I do like to think that we start everybody off at a B. I think that is the better way to go because it allows people who are really doing extraordinary work and who are revisiting and rethinking. And what's been fantastic, frankly, for me this week is the questions. I've been in touch with absolutely every single member of this class this week. And the questions are journalism questions. It's just so great. It's like, I've hit this bump in the road. I don't know how I can get past this. I've got a deadline at 5 o'clock on Thursday. What am I going to do? This thing is not coming through. And it's like, yeah, it's not, but it's part of the larger story. Maybe we'll pursue it, maybe we won't. But these are real journalism questions. They're not academic, phooey questions. They're real. Do you feel that way? Have you felt this way? I mean, were you looking at Basecamp? It's a magazine in and of itself. It's so interesting. I think really we're headed someplace. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say, and I told these other guys to come here at 10:15. Since the class, some people are missing and the media partners aren't here, should we start talking? Is there stuff you want to talk about before the media partners?
I have a good question. So with the pitch next Friday or next Thursday before 5, do we need to the 10 points that you get on each of them? Is it only if it's picked up or only if you present it?
This is to make you competitive for it.
I'm sorry. I just
with yourself.
Okay, so go ahead. Okay, where would you like us to turn this in? I mean, is this a post-based
okay.
Is this an email to you?
So on the bottom here, I'll do some of this now because we always run out of time. So these stories are going to be crowdsourced. Have you all felt the benefit of putting your stuff up and having other people chew on it and say, hey, how about this? Or I noticed that. Amazing, isn't it? It's such a scary thing to do it first, and then you do it and you go, whoa, okay, how great. I have this expert helping me out. I know Amade felt that way with Marissa and others just chiming in. I mean, it's just been really incredible. incredible. So it's going to be crowdsourced. There's going to be a new thread on Basecamp called E30 Garage. Be thinking about it as a garage where you take your car in to get it fixed. So that's where you're going to start your, I would suggest, now that you know, that you don't have to be embarrassed about your ideas, have them somewhat fully developed, but put them out there. When they are fully developed, you land them on a blog. Whereas we need to start a place where it's not, we'll get you a blog, and the reason is because the deadline for this homework is 12 noon on Thursday. Then Doug, Edward, myself, the media partners will read them. We need time to read them. And we will choose. So when you come into class on Friday, you're going to know what you're doing. Now, just because you're presenting 3 projects, and let's say all 3 of them get picked, you will probably work on one. So we're going to narrow, I mean, we per force have to narrow. We're going to have 39 proposals. Not all of them are going to get picked. Some of them are going to become aggregated on each other, right? So we're getting narrow.
5 points for that.
The other is to see these pyramids of the base is the data mining and the data sets. Those do not go out the window. Those become our library, our archive, our resource. When we start talking with the media partners, be listening and say, I know something about this. Doesn't mean you have to do that story, but supposing Sam wants to do that story and Layla says, I know something about this, she can go over to Layla and say, hey, I'm interested in this story, what can you flesh it out? We don't have time today to do long conversations on each story. It's 39 conversations with 13 students and 6 media partners, and it'll be 6 o'clock at night.
Do the stories that you pitch have to do with what we've been investigating over the past 2 weeks?
It's up to you. The only exception to that is David and Sam, and I need to I'll talk to you in front of everybody right now. You know, as you can tell, Doug has a very, very specific idea in mind about what to do with this data, and he wants to get his hands on it, and Miles wants to get his hands on it. Juan's objection to it is that it's too light. It doesn't have to do with the cultural pockets. It's you know, driven by the LA Stage Alliance, which wants information about who's going to spend money on arts. Doug doesn't really care about that because it's the only existing, plus it exists in 20 other cities, way of starting a measurement, starting the tool. We need to develop the tool, so it's a way of developing the tool. Juan and Drew are looking for very traditional stories. They don't quite yet get the idea that this is different. It's just different. We're starting because journalism as it's working is not working. Okay, so we're starting in a different way. Data mining, data sets. Read that Neiman article. Start following and realize how much journalism is dependent on this now. And who was there at the social flow? Layla was there. David was there. Did you get stuff from that about data and reliability and what journalism is?
Well, I think, you know, he has his own agenda about what journalism is. And he's turning it into a quantitative exercise, you know. But I think that's just one perspective. You know, that every journalist is going to be a statistical geek. I don't think that's realistic either.
Well, he's also, this is a guy who has figured out the algorithm to watch social media flow. And to be able to time it perfectly so that as you push out your article on the economy, it hits your audience exactly at the moment when they're the most ready. So they have increased the subscriptions for many different magazines and newspapers, and also worked for a lot of advertising firms and companies. What's that? Okay, yes, Drew is here. That's your media partner. Oh, Open sesame, wow, that was. Oh, hey, I'm fine, good to see you. Great. Come on in and, have you met everybody yet?
Hey, I'm Drew. I'm recognized as Jason.
Robin.
Brian. Hey, what's up? I'm Drew.
Imani, nice to meet you.
Chia.
I'm Drew.
Helena.
Hey, I'm Drew.
Okay, so, Drew, we had a preliminary meeting, I feel like they were all there.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
But we could do a rerun.
Okay, what time is it?
10,
And media partners are coming right in on time, baby.
right,
Okay, be on time, be on time, be on time. I'm sorry, Sarah, but gotta be on time. It's just
Sorry,
gotta
I'm doing
happen.
an interview with a teacher in Texas trying to network
I know,
teachers in
I know.
Developer.
Hey, how are you?
Morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Good.
Did I ask you that already?
Yes,
How are
Okay,
you?
I have
okay.
my coffee.
Yeah.
The key thing also with the ship metaphor is communication. If you don't have a task, if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't understand it, you know where to find me. I may not be able to let go of the wheel all the time from here on in. So figure it out and remember, communicate. Communicate with each other. You need help. You're gonna dangling over the edge. You call for help, okay? You know, because every one of you applied for this, and every one of you got it. And you're here for a reason. So, you know, we're in the same boat, headed to the same shores, here we go. Okay, woo. All right, so, what time is it again?
10:20.
Okay, so we're gonna move pretty fast. What we're gonna do is, Drew has to leave at 11, so Drew is gonna go first. Each, you have half an hour, you have half an hour.
Sure.
Reed and Lori have half an hour. In that half an hour, let's look at the reframing again. And I want you to talk about what you want to see and do.
Sure.
And the goal, especially before you all leave, is your goal is to nab 3 stories. Your goal, if in the time of the 30 seconds, we need to be as specific as possible. The pyramid's getting tighter, right? Getting narrower.
So
So-
Drew, you have about 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. Right.
So be thinking what kind of stories, and we'll talk back and forth. But this is art, why here? Why art happens here?
So I could give you a quick rerun on kind of what we're up to at Artbound. Maybe you heard, I was here a while ago. But so I work with KCET and we're at this new project called Artbound. We have about 30 contributors all across Southern California in all 11 different counties. And these contributors are writing articles about things that are happening in their areas. And they're not just arts journalists, but they're actually artists themselves, they're museum curators, they're administrators. So they write articles that come to me, and they pitch the article, and I kind of develop it with them to make sure that it fits within Artbound, what we're up to. And then we take these articles, put them up online. We do about 15 articles a week. And then out of those articles, the ones that do the best online, we put them against one of my choices. I pick an article that I think is important that really didn't
I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
Okay. They've all analyzed your site.
Gotcha.
They've written long things. They know everything there is to know.
Sure.
They are really focused on why art here. So
Okay.
we have 5 weeks in which to develop
Sure.
stories. They're going to leave with 3, so we're going to nail it.
Okay.
They've been doing a ton of work on
Sure.
this. So
Sure.
let's just start talking stories and what's why here mean.
Great. So all throughout Artbound, we're basically looking at the idea of why is art happening in California? Not just art, but why is Southern California the creative capital of the world? In a lot of different ways. You know, why are we developing art? Why are we making movies? Why is this where tech is coming from? So we're looking at creativity and why does that happen? So we're basically taking a cross-section of why this happens. Is it governmental? Is it the people? Is it the communities? So that's what I want to throw to you people, basically, is for you to look at these ideas and try to orient how does this happen here. And so the way that we do it is through long profiles of different artists, and but we also have pieces that are more, you know, they're think pieces looking at government and things like that. So I know that you guys have been working with data sets, is that correct? So that's something that I'm really particularly interested in, is looking at why art happens and also why doesn't art happen in certain places. Like why is art happening in certain different places in LA? Like why does Leimert Park have a really great art scene? Why does West Hollywood? Why, but then why don't we hear anything from Van Nuys or from...
No, let me just add to the mix that Doug McLennan has added to this, that it's also about people, not only about place, right? So who is creating art? Who is consuming art? I mean, just to read what Doug said, who are the arts consumers in LA? What do they look like? How do they behave? Where do they live? Where do they go? What are the communities with very active arts consumers? And he says, out of these come great secondary questions. Which art forms share the most audience? For example, do dance audiences go to theater? What's the age of the theater audience? So in that way, we can use the databases also.
Mm-hmm. And we're particularly interested in access too. Trying.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So
Max is interested in that. She's not here right now.
Oh, okay. Because access is something that's really important to us. When we look at the arts journalism, that there's these same stories that we hear over and over again of great art coming from downtown, great art coming from Silver Lake, and all of these different things like that. But why aren't we hearing about art happening in other places? Like, I'm obsessed with Koreatown right now because it's a beast that no one can really get into. I feel like none of the media organizations here could really get into it. So like that's an area that I'm fascinated in, and seeing how to break into that, and to talk about these different enclaves all throughout Los Angeles, and how do we find out what art is happening there. Yeah.
By break into it, you mean just like getting to understand it, getting stories?
Everything, yeah. Like looking at why is this area not getting as many stories out of it? Why is there little representation? But also, what kind of galleries are there? Is it because art exists out of the gallery scene? Is it because it's more traditional? Things like that. And these communities are very, very international as well. So kind of looking at that. So yeah, we tried to do a story on the San Gabriel Valley and trying to find out why they didn't have very many established quote-unquote art galleries. And then in that same thing, we're looking at why do we think certain galleries are established and other ones aren't? Because there are galleries out there, there's a lot of them, but then why doesn't that interface in with like a global art market? And so yeah, that's kind of what we're interested in.
Questions for Drew?
Yeah.
When you say access, what exactly do you mean?
In the sense that people who are artists, because there's artists everywhere, we know this, and but why aren't artists in some places able to interface with the gallery system? Are there places where they can't show their art? Are there places that there's not education able to refine their craft, things like that?
So it's access to the artists.
Yeah, to the
Not to the consumers or the viewers.
well, that too as well.
So, I'm sorry, you say that one more time. You said why, so there's artists everywhere, why aren't they able to access gallery, exhibition, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that idea of why does it happen in certain areas and some areas it doesn't happen.
So given what Drew has said and what Doug said in his reframing, what can you come up with? What does that spark?
With regard to consumers of art and makers of art, isn't there something, or could there be something inherent in certain neighborhoods, certain communities that create the conditions for, say, new immigrants or cultural traditions to produce art, whereas other, this is purely speculative, other more homogeneous neighborhoods may not be as pressing a need to make art that connects with an older tradition, say, or to make art that expresses a political point.
One thing, this is kind of a crazy aside, but I hope you're ready for it. I just got back from Istanbul, and when I was in Istanbul, they have Istanbul Modern, which is their brand new museum, about 4 years old. And when you go into the museum, and I was super excited to see, some Turkish art, I want to see stuff that's really edgy. And when you get into the gallery, it's all art that mimics Western art in certain ways. And so that's something that's also interesting to see this thing of what is quote unquote art. And in Istanbul, their idea was we're trying to interface in with the global Western art tradition, but really they have a lot of stuff that's really independent that they should have been showing them, you know, that's their own work, that's based off of Turkish tradition. And I feel like in Los Angeles, throughout Southern California, there's a lot of that. People who are trying to get into this globalized market, but really the art that they're doing is so revolutionary and different on their own. And how do we find these people who are working outside of the gallery system? How do we find these people that are doing independent work that isn't influenced by this other stuff? Because we know that it's happening in Los Angeles, but we just have to find it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but those people who are, I guess, a little confused as to, so are you trying to find people who are making the Western interface kind of art that's going gallery, or you're looking for completely independent extra of gallery, independent of gallery?
It's
artists?
the main question that deals with both of those things, of like, how does that work? Like, why does the system work this way?
Okay.
And so we're looking for stories on that, specifically on why are there certain areas that interface in with this global art market, but then also looking at the artists who break within that tradition, people who
Okay.
really are doing super independent stuff that works outside of PR, that works outside of everything, the outsider artists.
I'm going to try to do this without rambling,
Sure.
because this is sort of a half-formed
No,
thought.
I totally ramble, I'm super good at speaking at you, so it's cool.
But why does where an artist is from matter? So, like, if an artist in Boyle Heights is making art in Boyle Heights and it goes to a gallery in Westwood, like, does it matter that the artist is from Boyle Heights? Is that more the story, or like, if these artists are in the gallery system or out of the gallery system, why does it matter where they're making their art? Like,
That's a great article. Like, I would read that article. If you wrote a think piece about that, that would be an Artbound piece. But to kind of go off that, you're definitely right. It's a super important question. Where we do these things called special projects, where we work with artists on long-term projects, and so they basically produce pieces for us over months. And we're working with an artist named Tanya Aguinaga. She's a furniture designer and jewelry designer. And she's from Tijuana, and she has this story, like a really rough life, and traveling across the border every day to go to school, illegally in San Diego. And for her, that's her story. And now she's starting to feel that thing of where she's from is what people are buying when they're buying her product. Because she feels that that's the thing that has eclipsed her works, right? So a lot of times in the art market and in journalism entirely, I think you'll see this, that people's stories will totally influence whether their art interfaces in with this global thing. You know?
So if you took your question, remember, like, we're starting with this, mindful that there's the data behind. So if the question is, why does it matter where you're from? You gotta look at the bigger picture of, well, where are people from in this place, if you define what the place is. And then what you did this week, even if you didn't do it on this particular subject, is what are the communities, who's having the conversation, who cares about the artists and where they're from? Maybe it's, if they're from Istanbul, is that a community of people? So you start to identify who's there, and then you narrow further into perhaps the profile of this one person who is a who. But the person who is a who is not independent. It's not like you're featuring them out of the blue. It's because they stand for something more specific that comes out of this base, this pyramid base. The work that Sam and David have done looking at who may feed this, much as Juan doesn't want to do with data sets. The fact of the matter is we need them. And whether or not it applies to this particular project, I think it does. I mean, I think what will come out of this, you will need to go to their research to find out. I mean, Imani found some incredible information about demographics and ethnicity and who's doing what and where. I mean, you just keep digging and digging and digging. And then the journalism is anchored to a bigger reality. Juan's fear on the base camp is really that data set is so driven by Main Street, white, upper middle class people. But it's a start of something. It stands for something, it allows you to build the tool around it.
And a lot of, go.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, I think that that issue of being anchored kind of plays into what Drew said about the perception of being established. So I still haven't actually seen that, the data itself, but I feel like that could at least carve out one corner. This is definitely established. So we could start to create the spectrum of what that means. I guess the concern I have is that we can find such well-organized data for the not established.
I don't know, maybe we should talk about this after, about cracking the nut that is
Yeah.
Tara's. So,
Yeah, we could talk about, we definitely can.
because we're up against a buzzsaw with him, so,
Interesting, okay, yeah,
well, you know.
yeah. Sean?
Well, I just, coming into this naive, I know some of the things I say might be like, duh, you know, but so now that I've prefaced my statement with no expectations, like some of the things I've been hearing from craftspeople and organizations is about this, it's a very similar issue, which is like the definition of like, some see themselves as studio craft, right? And there's this idea of studio craft and museum, and typically like the museums in Portland and Boston, they typically feature this type of work, you know. Our museum here in LA is a little different in that, you know, they're doing a tattoo exhibit, you know, which is more a broad definition of craft. So,
Folk art.
right, and then you have the Renegade Craft Fair, which the LA Times covered when, I think it was like a month or two ago. And their whole idea is to, they were tired of the studio craft paradigm, and they were like, there are craftspeople making things that aren't $3,000 to buy and are actually useful in your home, and maybe we could put this in a fair and people can make money selling their crafts, you know. So, I don't know, I see that, I've seen that dichotomy.
So what's
in
the
that
question
world.
are you asking?
No, I guess I'm just stating, like, I see, if that's an interesting question, I see that as a path to go down, you
Well,
know.
what's the question?
I don't have a question.
I think the thing that's interesting about your work is that you've been focusing on crafts, and you've got a lot of like interest from people in the fellowship. Like a lot of the fellows are really interested in that too, and some of the questions that came up out of that. And where do you fit that interest into which project?
I'm sorry, I understand now what you're saying, Edward.
Yeah.
Like, I thought you meant like, well, what question are you asking me personally?
Oh, no.
No, I mean, I think the question is, I don't know, I'm gonna be quiet now.
Well, no, I mean, because everybody's probably having the same thing. Like, so the point is, you've been working hard on stuff. You're now trying to, it's a little bit of a dance, a little bit of a back and forth thing. You need to figure out where your information that you're so excited about is going to fit. You're so excited about crafts, where is it going to fit? And you have to write a very persuasive thing that it fits here. So you need to use this time right now with him before he goes away to find out, is it relevant? Does it fit? How does it fit? And you guys chime in and help this guy out to make it fit, because he's done a lot of work. He cares about it. It's an interesting subject, and he wants it to get picked, right?
One thing that I could bring up about, that is definitely an art-bound story, is we don't really work with craft, but folk art is something that we're really interested in. And talking about contemporary folk art, it's not, you know, making a quilt or something like that, but folk art in Los Angeles is what do you paint on the hood of your car, what are your tattoos. This is stuff that is very Los Angelino. And so this is stuff that I'm very interested in. The art of when there's like a drive-by, the way that people design the funeral stuff, the candles and all of that, that's an art form in itself, a type of folk art. So that's stuff that I'm very, very interested in. There's people who use plastic cups who put it into fences to make designs, and they do it outside of a lot of high schools here. Like that's something that is a folk art that's specifically for Los Angeles. So this is stuff that I'm very, very interested in. People who hack into digital billboards and make art on those. You know, these are different kinds of folk art that exist here. So kind of, yeah, so that's kind of what I'm interested in. If you have any stories like that, start thinking about it.
Are you interested in that, Sean? Those kinds of things?
Yeah, it wasn't something I've been thinking about this week, but yes, I'm interested in it.
Cool.
And she.
It sounds fascinating.
What?
No, I think another kind of shifting from craft, Layla and I have actually been following an assemblage artist in Watts. Her name is Dominique Moody, and she sort of, essentially what she does is, or what she's doing, and just, help me out, is that she takes pieces from all types of things.
Sure.
It can be salvage yards, anywhere, and puts together incredible pieces. But what she's now doing is, because she considers herself a nomadic artist, is she's creating, and she happens to also be blind. She's about 54 or something. She's a blind artist.
70% blind, I think.
Yeah.
She only has a peripheral vision. She wouldn't be able to see anyone in this room.
Right. But she uses that and pretty much she's creating this mobile home that is essentially like, it's.
She's building from scratch.
That she's
all the
building
stuff
from
that she's
by hand.
finding.
Yeah, I'm totally on the story, by the way.
Okay.
Right.
So I guess our question would just be if that would fit into that.
That is totally what we're looking for, because it's outside of the gallery system really. It's off the radar, but also fits in with a long tradition as well of assemblage artists out of South LA, because there's a lot of different people who've worked in that medium. So, even doing a larger piece that is looking at assemblage artists from South LA and using her and some other people, that'd be really cool. But a standalone profile would also work. A profile on blind artists, I mean, this is stuff that, or people with disabilities who make art, these are things that work well for us.
Are you guys interested at all in bridging kind of the issue of non-established artists to established artists? You mentioned Koreatown, and I'm a classically trained pianist, so I know many Korean pianists who are wanting to, become very Western established artists in that way. Is that something that's appealing, or are you more invested in the very local goings-on?
Both.